Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she walked down the shooting lane at Desert Eagle Range in Nevada. The summer heat was brutal, even at 7 in the morning. She had been working at the range for 8 months now, mostly doing the jobs nobody else wanted, replacing torn paper targets, sweeping brass casings, and cleaning the bathroom facilities. At 23, Sarah was trying to save money for college. Her dreams of becoming a veterinarian seemed far away when she was making minimum wage at a shooting range. Most days felt the same. Wake up at 5, drive 30 minutes to the range, work until closing, then go home to her tiny apartment and microwave dinner. The range attracted all kinds of people. Weekend warriors who came to blow off steam, hunters preparing for deer season, and law enforcement officers keeping their skills sharp. Sarah had learned to read people quickly. She could tell who was experienced and who was dangerous just by watching how they handled their weapons. Today started like any other day. She grabbed her cart filled with fresh paper targets and headed down the lanes. The morning crowd was already arriving. She recognized most of the regulars. There was Bill, a retired police officer who came every Tuesday and Thursday. Maria, a single mother who had started coming after a break-in at her home. And then there were the military guys. The military personnel were easy to spot. They moved differently, spoke differently, and shot differently. They treated their weapons with respect, but also with the familiarity of someone who had depended on those tools for survival. Sarah admired them, but felt intimidated at the same time. As she replaced the target at lane 7, she heard voices approaching. A group of men in civilian clothes walked past, but their bearing gave them away immediately. These were special operations guys. She had seen enough military personnel to recognize the confident way they carried themselves. Fresh. Targets at lane 12 through 16, called out Mike, the range safety officer. Sarah, can you get those set up? Sarah nodded and pushed her cart toward the designated lanes. As she worked, she could hear the men discussing their training exercise. They were Navy SEALs, preparing for an upcoming deployment. Their conversation was casual but professional, discussing shooting positions and target acquisition. One of them, a tall man with kind eyes, noticed her struggling with a target that had gotten stuck on the pulley system. Need some help with that? He asked. I got it, thanks, Sarah replied, finally freeing the stubborn target. She was used to handling things on her own. The man smiled. I'm Jake, by the way. We'll probably be here most of the morning. Sarah, she replied, surprised by his friendliness. Most customers barely acknowledged her existence. As the morning progressed, Sarah continued her rounds. She could hear the SEALs training, their shots precise and controlled. During a break in their exercise, Jake approached her again. You ever shoot? He asked casually. Sarah shook her head. Never had the chance, I just work here. Jake looked surprised. You work at a shooting range and never fired a weapon? The employee handbook says range workers aren't allowed to use the facilities during work hours, Sarah explained, and I can't afford to come here on my days off. Jake frowned slightly. That seems wrong. Someone who works around firearms should understand how they work. Sarah shrugged. It wasn't the first time someone had pointed this out. She had always been curious about shooting, but it seemed like an expensive hobby she couldn't afford. Her paycheck barely covered rent and groceries. The conversation was interrupted by Mike calling for the next training session to begin. Jake rejoined his team, but Sarah noticed him glancing her way several times during the remainder of the morning. As lunchtime approached, the SEALs took another break. Sarah was cleaning up brass casings when she overheard them discussing marksmanship. Fundamentals. Jake was explaining breathing techniques to a newer team member. The key is natural respiratory pause, Jake was saying. You don't hold your breath, you just pause naturally and squeeze. Sarah found herself listening intently. She had always been interested in the technical aspects of shooting, even if she had never tried it herself. Working at the range had taught her a lot about different firearms and techniques, just from observation. Sarah, Jake called out, noticing her attention. Come here for a second. She approached somewhat nervously, wondering if she had done something wrong by eavesdropping. "We were just discussing the basics of marksmanship," Jake said. "What do you think is the most important fundamental?" Sarah was caught off guard by the question. I don't really know. I mean, I hear people talking about it, but I've never actually shot." "But you must have picked up something working here," Jake pressed gently. "What do you observe when you watch good shooters versus poor ones?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Well, the good shooters seem calmer. They don't rush, and they don't move the gun much when they pull the trigger." Jake nodded approvingly. "Exactly right. Trigger control and follow-through. You've got good observational skills." The other SEALs looked mildly impressed. One of them, a shorter man with a beard, spoke up. "She's got better instincts than half the recruits we see." Sarah felt a flush of pride but also embarrassment. She was just a range worker, not a shooter. As the day continued, Sarah found herself paying closer attention to the SEALs' training. They were working on various drills, some focusing on speed, others on precision. Jake seemed to be the primary instructor, offering guidance and corrections to his teammates. During one exercise, Sarah noticed Jake watching her as she worked. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. Instead, he seemed to be studying her, as if he was considering something. The afternoon was winding down when Jake approached her one final time. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Sure," she replied, continuing to sweep up brass casings. "Why do you work here if you're not interested in shooting?" Sarah paused her sweeping. "I need the job. And I am interested, it's complicated." Jake nodded slowly. "Life often is, but sometimes opportunities come along that can change things." Sarah wasn't sure what he meant by that, but something in his tone suggested this conversation wasn't over. As the SEALs packed up their gear and prepared to leave, Jake stopped by her cart one more time. "We'll be back tomorrow morning," he said. "Same time." "I'll have fresh targets ready," Sarah replied. Jake smiled. "I'm counting on it." As Sarah watched the team leave, she had a strange feeling that tomorrow would be different. She couldn't explain why, but something about Jake's demeanor suggested that her routine days at the range might be about to change dramatically. The next morning arrived with the same desert heat, but Sarah felt different as she prepared for work. She had spent the previous evening thinking about her conversation with Jake. His words kept echoing in her mind. Sometimes opportunities come along that can change things. She arrived at the range 15 minutes early, something she never did. Mike was already there, preparing for the day's activities. "You're early," he observed, looking up from his clipboard. "Couldn't sleep," Sarah admitted. "Figured I might as well get a head start." By 7:30, the SEALs had arrived. Sarah tried to act normal, focusing on her tasks, but she found herself stealing glances at Jake's team. They set up at the same lanes as the day before and began their morning routine. Jake caught her eye and waved. Sarah waved back, feeling a flutter of nervousness she couldn't explain. The morning progressed much like the previous day. Sarah replaced targets, cleaned lanes, and tried to stay out of the way while the special operations team conducted their training. However, she noticed Jake watching her more frequently, and during breaks, he seemed to be having quiet conversations with his teammates. Around 10 o'clock, during a break in their exercises, Jake approached her cart. "Sarah, do you have a few minutes?" "Sure, what do you need?" Jake glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. "My team and I were talking last night. We think you're wasting your potential here." Sarah looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You've got natural instincts for this," Jake explained. "Yesterday, when we asked you about marksmanship fundamentals, you gave better answers than people who have been shooting for years. You understand the mental side of shooting without ever having fired a round." "I just pay attention," Sarah said modestly. "That's exactly my point," Jake continued. "Most people don't really pay attention, they just point and shoot. You analyze, you observe, you think. Those are the qualities that make exceptional marksmen." Sarah felt flattered but confused. "Okay, but what does that have to do with anything?" "I'm just a range worker," Jake smiled. "What if you didn't have to be?" Before Sarah could respond, Jake's teammate with the beard walked over. Jake had introduced him the day before as Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, but everyone called him Chief. "Sarah, right?" Chief asked. "Yes, sir." "Jake tells me you've never shot before, but you understand the fundamentals better than most." Sarah nodded, unsure where this conversation was headed. Chief continued, "We've got a theory. We think some people are natural-born shooters. They have the right combination of hand-eye coordination, mental discipline, and instinctive understanding of ballistics. But most of these people never get the chance to find out because they don't have access to proper training or equipment." "What Chief is saying," Jake interjected, "is that we'd like to find out if you're one of those people." Sarah's heart began racing. "I don't understand. What are you asking?" Jake looked toward Mike, who was busy with other customers, then back at Sarah. "We're asking if you'd like to learn how to shoot. Real shooting, not just plinking at paper, targets. We're talking about precision marksmanship." "But I work here," Sarah protested. "I can't use the range during work hours." "What if we talk to Mike?" Chief suggested. "What if we made it part of your job?" Sarah stared at them both. "You would do that?" "We've already discussed it," Jake admitted. "Mike knows our team, knows we're serious professionals. We told him we'd like to conduct some experimental training and we need a volunteer who doesn't have any bad shooting habits to unlearn." "He said yes?" Sarah asked, hardly believing it. "He said yes," Chief confirmed, "with the condition that any training happens during slow periods and doesn't interfere with your regular duties." Sarah felt dizzy. This seemed too good to be true. "But why me? You don't even know me." Jake's expression became serious. "Sarah, I've been in special operations for 12 years. I've trained hundreds of people. There's something about the way you carry yourself, the way you observe and analyze. You have the mindset of a warrior, but you don't know it yet." Chief nodded in agreement. "Plus, we're curious. We want to see what happens when someone with natural instincts gets proper training from the beginning." Sarah looked between the two men. "What kind of training are we talking about?" "Basic marksmanship fundamentals first," Jake explained. "Proper stance, grip, sight alignment, trigger control. Then, if you show aptitude, we move into more advanced techniques. Precision, shooting different positions, various distances." "And if I'm terrible at it?" Sarah asked. Chief laughed. "Then you go back to replacing targets and we'll have learned something interesting about our theory." Jake's expression remained serious. "But Sarah, I don't think you'll be terrible at it. I think you're going to surprise yourself." Sarah took a deep breath. The opportunity seemed incredible but also intimidating. "When would we start?" "How about right now?" Jake asked. "It's a slow morning. Mike said he could spare you for an hour." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Right now? Today?" "No time like the present," Chief said with a grin. Sarah looked around the range. It was indeed quiet, with only a few casual shooters at the far lanes. Mike was reading a magazine behind the counter. The morning sun was streaming through the windows, creating long shadows across the concrete floor. "I don't know the first thing about shooting," Sarah said nervously. "That's what makes this perfect," Jake replied. "You don't have any bad habits to break. You're a clean slate." Sarah realized her hands were trembling slightly. "What if I'm dangerous? What if I can't handle a gun safely?" "That's why we're here," Chief assured her. "Safety is the first thing we teach. Everything else comes after." Jake stepped closer, his voice gentle but confident. "Sarah, I've seen a lot of people pick up firearms for the first time. Some are nervous, some are overconfident, some are scared. You're nervous, which is smart. But underneath that nervousness, I can see focus, I can see determination." "How can you see that?" Sarah asked. "Because I've watched you work for 2 days," Jake replied. "You pay attention to details, you're methodical. You don't take shortcuts, you respect the equipment and the environment. Those are exactly the qualities we need in a precision shooter." Chief checked his watch. "What do you say, Sarah? Ready? To find out what you're capable of." Sarah looked toward the shooting lanes, then back at the two SEALs. Her mind raced with doubts and excitement in equal measure. She thought about her minimum wage job, her dreams of college, her routine existence. This seemed like the kind of opportunity that only happened in movies. "Okay," she said quietly, then louder. "Okay, let's do it." Jake smiled broadly. "Outstanding. Chief, can you get the equipment while I talk to Mike?" As Chief walked toward their gear bags, Jake placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You made the right choice. Trust me, your life is about to get a lot more interesting." Sarah watched Jake walk toward the counter to speak with Mike. Her heart was pounding and her palms were sweaty. In just a few minutes, she would be holding a firearm for the first time in her life. She had no idea that this moment would be the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself. Chief returned with a rifle case and a bag of equipment. "Ready to start your education, Sarah?" Sarah nodded, though she wasn't sure she was ready for anything. But as she followed Chief toward Lane 10, she realized that ready or not, her life was about to change forever. Sarah's hands trembled as she followed Chief to Lane 10. Jake finished his conversation with Mike and joined them, carrying a black rifle case. The weapon inside looked serious and intimidating through the case's clear panel. "Before we touch anything," Jake began, "we need to talk about safety. These are the 4 fundamental rules that govern everything we do with firearms." Sarah listened intently as Jake explained each rule. Keep the weapon pointed in a safe direction. Never point the weapon at anything you don't intend to destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. Be sure of your target and what lies beyond it. These rules aren't suggestions, Chief added. They're absolute. Break one, and people can die. Sarah nodded seriously. The weight of responsibility was already settling on her shoulders. Jake opened the rifle case, revealing a sleek black rifle. This is a custom AR-15 platform, chambered in .223 Remington. It's accurate, reliable, and perfect for learning precision fundamentals. As Jake lifted the rifle from the case, Sarah noticed how naturally he handled it. His movements were smooth and confident, every motion purposeful. He checked the chamber, engaged the safety, and handed the weapon to Sarah. The rifle was heavier than she expected, but felt solid in her hands. The metal was cool against her palms, and she could smell the faint odor of gun oil. "How does it feel?" Jake asked. "Heavy," Sarah admitted. "But good heavy, if that makes sense." Chief smiled. "Perfect answer. A weapon should feel substantial. If it feels like a toy, you won't respect it." For the next 20 minutes, Jake walked Sarah through the basic components of the rifle. He showed her how to safely load and unload, how to adjust the sights, and how to properly hold the weapon. Sarah absorbed every word, asking questions, and taking mental notes. "Now comes the important part," Jake said, "your shooting position." He guided Sarah into a prone position on a shooting mat. "Lying down gives you the most stable platform," he explained. "We'll work on standing and kneeling positions later, but prone is where you learn the fundamentals." Sarah settled into position, the rifle supported by a bipod. Jake adjusted her posture, moving her left elbow slightly, repositioning her right shoulder. "Sight alignment," Chief said, kneeling beside her. "Look through the scope and tell me what you see." Sarah peered through the scope, trying to focus on the target 50 yards downrange. "It's blurry. I can't get everything in focus at once." "That's normal," Jake assured her. "Focus on the crosshairs. Let the target be slightly soft. Your eye will naturally want to focus on the target, but fight that instinct." After several minutes of adjustment, Sarah began to understand what Jake meant. The crosshairs became crisp and clear, with the target visible but not sharp. "Better," she said. "Excellent. Now we work on trigger control," Jake continued. "This is where most people fail. They jerk the trigger, they slap it, they do everything except squeeze it properly." Jake demonstrated the correct finger placement and squeeze technique using an unloaded rifle. "Straight back, consistent pressure, follow through. The shot should almost surprise you." Sarah practiced the motion repeatedly with an empty chamber. Jake was patient, offering small corrections and encouragement. She could feel herself getting more comfortable with the rifle. "I think she's ready," Chief said after watching her dry fire practice. Jake nodded. "Sarah, Are you ready to fire your first shot? Sarah's heart rate spiked. I think so. I'm nervous. Good nervous or bad nervous? Jake asked. Sarah considered the question. Good nervous, I think. Like before a test I studied hard for. Perfect. Chief, can you load one round? Chief inserted a single cartridge into the magazine and locked it into the rifle. One round, chamber empty. Jake guided Sarah back into position. Remember everything we practiced. Sight alignment, trigger control, follow through. Take your time. Sarah settled behind the rifle, trying to control her breathing. She could feel both men watching her, but their presence was reassuring rather than pressure-inducing. She found her sight picture, placed her finger on the trigger, and began to apply pressure. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that made Sarah flinch slightly. The recoil was less than she expected, just a gentle push against her shoulder. Where did it go? She asked, trying to see the target through the scope. Chief was already looking, through spotting scope. Holy... He stopped himself. Jake, take a look at this. Jake peered through his own spotting scope, then looked at Sarah with surprise. Sarah, your first shot is in the 9 ring. Is that good? Sarah asked, having no frame of reference. Sarah, Chief said slowly, most people's first shots don't even hit the target. You just placed around 2 inches from center at 50 yards. Sarah felt a rush of excitement mixed with disbelief. Really? Really, Jake confirmed. That was either incredible beginner's luck or you have natural ability. Let's find out which, Chief said, loading 5 more rounds into the magazine. For the next 30 minutes, Sarah fired groups of 3 to 5 shots, with Jake and Chief coaching her between strings. Her groups were remarkably consistent, with most shots clustering within a few inches of each other. This is unprecedented, Jake muttered to Chief during one of Sarah's breaks. I've never seen anything like it, Chief replied. She's shooting, better than most people after months of training. Sarah overheard their conversation. Are you just being nice? Jake shook his head. Sarah, we don't do nice when it comes to marksmanship. We're objective, because lives depend on accuracy. What you're doing right now defies everything I know about learning curves. Your groups are getting smaller, not larger, Chief added. Usually people start okay and then get worse as they develop bad habits or get tired. You're actually improving, with each string. Sarah looked downrange at her target through the spotting scope. Even to her untrained eye, she could see that her shots were grouping tightly around the center of the target. What happens now? She asked. Jake and Chief exchanged glances. Now we see how far this goes, Jake said. Are you willing to try some longer distances? Sarah nodded eagerly. The initial nervousness had been replaced by intense focus and genuine excitement. How much longer? Let's try 100 yards, Chief suggested. That's where natural ability really shows itself. They moved to a different lane with targets set at 100 yards. The target looked impossibly small through the scope, but Jake made some adjustments to the sight settings and talked Sarah through the new challenges. Everything matters more at distance, Jake explained. Wind, breathing, trigger control. Small mistakes get magnified. Sarah's first shot at the longer distance was slightly off-center, but still well within the target rings. Her second shot was better. By her 5th shot, she was consistently hitting within a 3-inch circle. Unbelievable, Chief whispered. Jake was quiet, studying Sarah with a mixture of amazement and something else she couldn't identify. Finally, he spoke. Sarah, I need to ask you something serious. Okay. Have you ever thought about doing something other than working at a shooting range? Sarah laughed. Like what? I don't have any real skills. Jake's expression remained serious. What if I told you that what you just did demonstrates skills that take most people years to develop? What if I told you that natural marksmen like you are incredibly rare? I'd say you're exaggerating, Sarah replied. Chief shook his head. We're not, Sarah. In my 20 years in the military, I've seen maybe 3 or 4 people with your natural ability. What happened to them? Sarah asked. Jake smiled. They became legends. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She looked at the rifle, in her hands, then at the target downrange, then at the two experienced SEALs who were looking at her with something approaching awe. "What are you saying?" she asked quietly. Jake's voice was steady and certain. "I'm saying your life just changed. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" The days following Sarah's first shooting experience blurred together. She found herself distracted during work, replaying every moment of her time on the range, the feeling of the rifle, the satisfaction of hitting targets, and most importantly, the look of genuine amazement on Jake and Chief's faces. The SEALs returned every day that week, and each session revealed more of Sarah's natural ability. By Thursday, she was consistently hitting targets at 200 yards. By Friday, Jake had her shooting at 300 yards with results that made both instructors stop talking and just stare through their spotting scopes. "This isn't normal," Chief said during one of their breaks on Friday afternoon. "Sarah, what you're doing shouldn't be possible for someone with less than a week of experience." Sarah was cleaning the rifle, a task she had learned to perform with the same attention to detail she brought to everything else. "Maybe I'm just a fast learner." Jake shook his head. "I've trained fast learners. This is different. You have an intuitive understanding of ballistics, wind drift, and atmospheric conditions. You're making adjustments that I don't remember teaching." You did teach me," Sarah protested. "I listen to everything you say." "That's just it," Chief interjected. "We'll mention something once, and you absorb it completely. Most students need to hear concepts repeatedly before they understand them." Jake had been quiet for most of the afternoon, but now he looked directly at Sarah. "We need to talk about your future." Sarah's hands paused in their cleaning motion. "What do you mean?" "I mean you're wasting your talent working as a range assistant," Jake said bluntly. "What you can do with a rifle is extraordinary. There are opportunities available to people with your abilities." "What kind of opportunities?" Sarah asked cautiously. Chief leaned forward. "Law enforcement, military, competitive shooting, private security, organizations that need precision marksmen." "I never went to college," Sarah said. "I don't have training in anything except replacing targets." Jake smiled. "Sarah, what you can do can't be taught in college. It's a natural gift that maybe one person in 10,000 possesses, and you have it." Sarah felt overwhelmed. "You're talking about changing my entire life based on a week of shooting." "Yes," Jake said simply. "That's exactly what we're talking about." Over the weekend, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. She researched competitive shooting, law enforcement careers, and military opportunities. Everything seemed beyond her reach, requiring experience or education she didn't have. Monday morning brought a new development. When Sarah arrived at work, Mike was waiting for her with a serious expression. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, gesturing toward his office. Sarah's stomach dropped. Had she done something wrong? Had Jake and Chief complained about her performance? "Am I in trouble?" she asked as they sat down. Mike laughed. "Quite the opposite. I got a call over the weekend from someone at the Navy Special Warfare Command." Sarah's eyes widened. "About me?" "About you," Mike confirmed. "Apparently, your SEAL friends have been talking to their superiors about a remarkable civilian marksman they discovered." Sarah felt dizzy. "What did they say?" Mike pulled out a piece of paper. "They want to offer you an opportunity to attend a special training program. It's called the Military Contractor Marksmanship Course." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked. "It means they want to train you to be a professional sniper," Mike said directly. "Not military, but civilian contractor support for special operations." Sarah stared at him. "That's impossible. I've been shooting for exactly 1 week." "According to the person I spoke with, your performance in that week was better than most people achieve after months of training," Mike replied. "They want to see how good you can become with proper instruction." "But I don't know anything about the military world," Sarah protested. Mike smiled. "Sarah, you know what most people never learn. You know how to listen, how to learn, and how to perform under pressure. Everything else can be taught." That afternoon, Jake and Chief arrived with another team member Sarah hadn't met before. He was older, with gray at his temples and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Sarah, this is Master Chief Peterson," Jake said. "He's here to talk to you about some possibilities." Master Chief Peterson studied Sarah with sharp eyes. "So you're the natural marksman I've been hearing about?" "I guess so, sir," Sarah replied uncertainly. "Don't guess," Peterson said firmly. "Are you the person who went from never firing a weapon to hitting targets consistently at 300 yards in less than a week?" "Yes, sir." Peterson nodded approvingly. "Good. I don't like people who are uncertain about their abilities. False modesty serves no one." He opened a folder and placed several documents on the table between them. "These are the details for a training program that begins in 6 weeks. It's intensive, it's demanding, and it's designed to produce the finest civilian marksmen in the world." Sarah looked at the papers but didn't touch them. "Why me?" "Because talent like yours is incredibly rare," Peterson replied. "We estimate that maybe 50 people in the entire country have your natural ability combined with the mental discipline necessary for precision shooting." "What would I be trained to do?" Sarah asked. Chief answered. "Support special operations, teams, long-range reconnaissance, counter-sniper operations, hostage rescue scenarios where precise shots are critical." Jake added, "You'd be part of a team, not military, but working alongside military personnel in situations where lives depend on marksmanship." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders again. "People's lives?" "Yes," Peterson said without hesitation. "That's why we're selective. That's why natural ability isn't enough. We need people who understand the gravity of what they're being asked to do." Sarah looked around the table at the 3 SEALs. "What if I'm not cut out for it? What if I can shoot targets but can't handle the pressure of real situations?" Peterson's expression softened slightly. "That's a fair question. The training program is designed to find that out. Not everyone who starts the program finishes it, but Sarah, based on what I've heard about your performance and your character, I believe you have what it takes." "The program pays a salary during training," Jake added. "More than you make here, and if you complete it successfully, the starting salary is 6 figures. Sarah's mind raced. 6 figures was more money than she had ever imagined earning. "What do I have to decide?" "Nothing today," Peterson said. "Take the information home. Think about it. Discuss it with family if you need to. But understand that opportunities like this don't come along often." He stood up and extended his hand. "Sarah, you have a gift. The question is whether you're willing to develop that gift to its full potential." Sarah shook his hand, feeling the calluses and strength of someone who had dedicated his life to his craft. "How long do I have to decide?" 2 weeks, Peterson replied. "If you're interested, we'll need time to process your application and complete background checks." As the 3 men prepared to leave, Jake approached Sarah one final time. "I know, this seems overwhelming," he said quietly. "But Sarah, I've never been more certain about anything in my military career. You were born for this." "How can you be so sure?" Sarah asked. Jake smiled. "Because I've spent my entire adult life around warriors. I know what one looks like." That evening, Sarah sat in her small apartment with the training program documents spread across her kitchen table. The opportunity seemed too good to be true, but also terrifying in its implications. She thought about her dreams of veterinary school, her routine life at the range, her minimum wage existence. Then she thought about the feeling of absolute focus she experienced behind a rifle, the satisfaction of precise shots, and the respect she saw in the eyes of 3 of America's most elite warriors. For the first time in her life, Sarah Martinez was faced with a decision that could change everything, and deep down she already knew what her answer would be. Sarah spent 2 sleepless nights staring at the training program documents. She read every page multiple times, trying to understand the full scope of what she was considering. The military contractor marksmanship course was 12 weeks long, held at a classified facility in Virginia. The curriculum covered advanced ballistics, field operations, tactical medicine, and psychological preparation. The psychological preparation section particularly caught her attention. It discussed the mental challenges of precision shooting, under stress, the responsibility of taking human life when necessary, and the long-term psychological effects of combat operations. This wasn't just about hitting targets anymore. On Wednesday morning, Sarah made a decision. She called the number Master Chief Peterson had given her and left a message saying she needed to speak with him. He called back within an hour. Peterson, here. Sarah, I hope you're calling with good news. I have some questions first, sir, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. Fire away. If I do this training and become good at it, what kind of missions would I actually do? Peterson was quiet for a moment. That depends on your final skill level and clearance status. Could be anything from Overwatch for diplomatic security to counter-terrorism operations. The common thread is that they all require absolute precision under pressure. Have you ever had to kill someone, sir? Yes, Peterson replied without hesitation. Multiple times. It's part of the job, Sarah. Not the main part, but it's a reality you need to accept. Sarah took a deep breath. How do you live with that? By understanding that every person I've killed was trying to kill innocent people, Peterson said. By knowing that my actions saved more lives than they took. It's not easy, but it's necessary. What if I can't handle that aspect of it? Sarah asked. Then you wash out of the program, Peterson replied honestly. Sarah, I'm not going to lie to you. This isn't a game. We're training you to be a weapon in service of your country. If you can't accept that responsibility, then this isn't for you. Sarah appreciated his directness. Can I think about it for a few more days? Of course. But Sarah, don't overthink this. You either have the heart of a warrior or you don't. Everything I've heard about you suggests you do. That afternoon, Jake arrived at the range alone. Sarah was replacing targets when she saw him walking toward her lane. Where's your team today? She asked. Training exercise, Jake replied. I came to check on you. Peterson said you had some tough questions. Sarah nodded. I'm trying to understand what I'd really be signing up for. Jake sat down on a nearby bench. Want to talk about it? For the next hour, Sarah shared her concerns and fears. Jake listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly just letting her work through her thoughts out loud. I keep thinking I'm not qualified for this, Sarah finally said. I mean, I can hit targets, but I'm not a soldier. I'm not tough. I've never been in a fight in my life. Jake smiled. Sarah, toughness isn't about being aggressive or confrontational. Toughness is about doing what needs to be done when it matters most. I've watched you work for 2 weeks now. You show up early, you work hard, you pay attention to details, and you don't give up when things get difficult. That's the kind of toughness we need. But what if I freeze up in a real situation? Sarah asked. That's what training is for, Jake replied. We don't just teach you how to shoot. We teach you how to function under stress, how to make decisions quickly, how to stay calm when everything around you is chaos. Sarah was quiet for several minutes. Jake, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Why do you do it? The dangerous missions, the deployments, all of it. Jake looked out across the desert landscape visible through the range's windows. Because I'm good at it, and because it matters. There are people in this world who want to hurt innocent civilians. My job is to stop them before they can do that. Doesn't it ever get to you? Of course it does, Jake admitted. But I've learned that the weight of action is lighter than the weight of inaction. I'd rather carry the burden of what I've had to do than live with the knowledge that I could have prevented something terrible and chose not to. That evening, Sarah called her sister Maria, her only close family member. Maria lived in California with her husband and 2 young children. You want to do what? Maria asked after Sarah explained the opportunity. I know it sounds crazy, Sarah said. Crazy doesn't begin to cover it, Maria replied. Sarah, you've been working at a shooting range for 8 months. Now you want to become some kind of government sniper? Not government, Sarah corrected. Contractor. And Maria, you should see what I can do. It's like I was born for this. Maria was quiet for a long time. Are you sure this isn't just because you're bored with your current job? Sarah considered the question seriously. No, it's more than that. Maria, for the first time in my life, I'm good at something. Really good. These SEALs who have been training me say I have natural ability that can't be taught. But it's dangerous, isn't it? Yes, Sarah admitted. But so is being a police officer, or a firefighter, or a lot of other jobs that help people. This is different, Sarah. This is about killing people. Sarah had been dreading this conversation, but she knew it was necessary. Sometimes, yes, but only people who are trying to hurt innocent civilians. Maria sighed deeply. I just don't want to lose you. You won't lose me, Sarah said. If anything, this training will make me safer. I'll know how to protect myself. They talked for another hour, with Maria asking practical questions about salary, benefits, and long-term career prospects. By the end of the conversation, Maria wasn't enthusiastic about Sarah's decision, but she was supportive. If this is really what you want, Maria said, then I'm behind you, but promise me you'll be careful. I promise. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in days. She found Mike in his office and knocked on the door. Come in, he called. Mike, I wanted to let you know that I'm going to accept the training program offer. Mike looked up from his paperwork and smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. When do you start? 6 weeks from Monday, Sarah replied. I'll need to give my 2 weeks' notice here. Mike laughed. Sarah, you think I'm going to let you work out a 2 weeks' notice after you've been selected for an elite military program? Take the next month off, rest up, get your affairs in order, and prepare yourself mentally. Sarah was touched by his generosity. Are you sure? Absolutely. Sarah, in all my years running this range, I've never seen anything like what you can do. You're going to represent us well. That afternoon, when Jake arrived for his team's training session, Sarah was waiting for him at lane 10. I've made my decision, she said. Jake studied her face and Sarah took a deep breath. I'm going to do it. I'm going to the training program. Jake's face broke into a wide grin. Outstanding. Sarah, you're making the right choice. I hope so, Sarah said, feeling both excited and terrified. Trust me, Jake said. 6 months from now, you're going to look back on this moment as the day your real life began. As Sarah watched Jake's team conduct their training exercises that afternoon, she tried to imagine herself in their position, professional, confident, deadly when necessary. It seemed impossible, but then again 2 weeks ago she had never fired a weapon. That evening, Sarah called Master Chief Peterson and officially accepted her spot in the training program. As she hung up the phone, she realized there was no going back now. In 6 weeks, she would begin a journey that would either transform her into one of America's elite marksmen or break her completely. For the first time since this all began, Sarah Martinez felt ready to find out which one it would be. 6 weeks later, Sarah stood at the entrance of the Quantico training facility in Virginia, holding a single duffel bag that contained everything she owned. The building looked more like a corporate office than a military installation, but the serious-faced guards and multiple security checkpoints told a different story. The past month and a half had been a whirlwind of preparation. Medical examinations, psychological evaluations, extensive background checks, and paperwork that seemed to never end. Sarah had also spent countless hours at the range with Jake and Chief, refining her skills and building confidence. You ready for this? Asked a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see a young man about her age, also carrying military-style luggage. He was tall, lean, and had the confident bearing she was learning to associate with military personnel. As ready as I can be, Sarah replied. I'm Sarah Martinez. Marcus Williams, he said, extending his hand. Former Army sniper. You? Former target replacer, Sarah said with a nervous laugh. Marcus looked confused. What? I worked at a shooting range. I've been shooting for exactly 7 weeks. Marcus stared at her. 7 weeks? And you're here? Apparently I have natural ability, Sarah said, feeling awkward about the claim. Natural ability, Marcus repeated slowly. Lady, I've been shooting competitively since I was 12, and served 2 tours as an Army marksman. They told me this. Program only accepts the top 1% of marksmen in the country. Sarah felt her confidence wavering. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe, Marcus said, but his tone wasn't unkind. Guess we'll find out. They were joined by 6 other candidates over the next hour. Former Marines, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and 1 police SWAT sniper. Sarah was the only woman and the only person without extensive military or law enforcement experience. Master Chief Peterson appeared promptly at 8 o'clock, accompanied by 2 other instructors Sarah didn't recognize. Welcome to the Military Contractor Marksmanship course, Peterson announced. You 8 people have been selected from over 300 applicants. You represent the finest marksmen your respective services could recommend. His eyes found Sarah in the group. Some of you have extensive experience. Others have raw talent. That needs development. Over the next 12 weeks, we will determine which of you has what it takes to support America's most elite military units. The first week was brutal. Physical training at 5 a.m., classroom instruction on ballistics and weather effects, equipment familiarization, and hours on the shooting range. Sarah struggled with the physical training, having never been particularly athletic, but she excelled in every aspect of marksmanship instruction. By the end of the first week, 2 candidates had voluntarily withdrawn from the program. The remaining 6 were pushed even harder. Martinez, Peterson called during week 2. You're up for evaluation. Sarah approached the firing line where a rifle was set up for precision shooting at 400 yards. Wind flags showed variable conditions, and the target was smaller than anything she had attempted before. You have 5 shots to place as tight a group as possible, Peterson instructed. No coaching, no assistance. Show me what you can do. Sarah settled into position, feeling the familiar calm that descended when she was behind a rifle. She studied. The wind flags made mental calculations about bullet drop and began her firing sequence. 5 shots later, Peterson was studying the target through his spotting scope with the expression Sarah couldn't read. Williams, he called to Marcus. Come look at this. Marcus peered through the scope and whistled softly. That's impossible. What's impossible? Sarah asked. Peterson turned to address the group. Martinez just fired a 1.2-inch group at 400 yards in variable wind conditions. That's better than some of our instructors can achieve. The other candidates stared at Sarah with mixtures of respect and disbelief. Sarah felt embarrassed by the attention, but also proud of her performance. As the weeks progressed, Sarah began to understand why she had been selected. While she struggled with some aspects of the training, particularly the physical demands and tactical movement, her marksmanship abilities continued to astound the instructors. By week 6, she was consistently outperforming candidates with years of experience. More importantly, she was developing the mental toughness and tactical understanding necessary for real-world operations. The psychological preparation component proved to be Sarah's biggest challenge. The instructors used realistic scenarios, stress inoculation, and intensive counseling to prepare candidates for the mental demands of combat operations. Martinez called Dr. Sarah Chen the program psychologist after a particularly difficult simulation. How are you processing today's exercise? The exercise had involved a hostage rescue scenario where Sarah had to make a precision shot with simulated civilians in close proximity to the target. The stress had been overwhelming. I understand intellectually what I need to do, Sarah replied. But emotionally, it's harder than I expected. Dr. Chen nodded. That's normal. The ability to take human life, even when justified, requires a psychological framework that doesn't develop overnight. Will I develop it? Sarah asked. Based on your progress so far, yes, Dr. Chen replied. You have the mental discipline and moral foundation necessary. It's just a matter of conditioning and preparation. In week 8, Sarah experienced her first real test under pressure. During a complex shooting exercise with multiple targets and time constraints, she achieved perfect scores while other candidates struggled with the stress. Outstanding work, Martinez, Peterson said afterward. You're developing exactly the way we hoped. Thank you, sir. Peterson studied her for a moment. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sir." "Do you ever regret leaving your job at the shooting range?" Sarah considered the question. The training was harder than anything she had ever done. She was exhausted, stressed, and constantly challenged, but she had never felt more alive or more purposeful. "No, sir," she replied firmly. "This is where I belong." Peterson smiled. "Good answer." By week 10, only 4 candidates remained in the program. Sarah, Marcus, and 2 others had survived the physical demands, psychological pressure, and intensive skill development. The final evaluation took place on a complex range, with multiple scenarios designed to test every aspect of their training. Urban environments, long-range precision shots, moving targets, and stress scenarios that pushed each candidate to their limits. Sarah approached each challenge with the calm focus that had become her trademark. She had learned to trust her instincts, rely on her training, and maintain composure under pressure. When the final scores were announced, Sarah had achieved the highest marks in the program's history. "Ladies and gentlemen," Peterson announced to the 4 graduates, "you are now certified military contract marksmen. You will be assigned to support various special operations units based on need and security clearances." He approached Sarah individually. "Martinez, you've exceeded every expectation we had. Your first assignment will be with a Navy SEAL team that specifically requested you." Sarah felt a thrill of excitement. "Which team, sir?" Peterson smiled. "Jake's team. They've been following your progress and requested you for their next deployment." 3 months later, Sarah found herself in a concealed position on a rooftop in an undisclosed location, providing overwatch for Jake's team as they conducted a high-value target capture mission. Through her scope, she watched the streets below with professional calm. "Overwatch, this is ground team." Jake's voice came through her earpiece. "We're moving to target building." "Copy, ground team," Sarah replied. "Street is clear, you have green light." As she watched Jake and his team move with precision and purpose, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 9 months ago, she had been replacing paper targets at a shooting range in Nevada. Now she was a key member of America's most elite counterterrorism operations. "Ground team, be advised." Sarah's voice was steady and professional. 2 individuals approaching from the east, armed, moving with purpose. "Copy, Overwatch. Can you take them if necessary?" Sarah adjusted her scope and calculated the range. 430 yards, slight crosswind, moving targets. 6 months ago, it would have seemed impossible. Now it was just another shot. "Affirmative, ground team. I have them." "Stand by, Overwatch. We'll try to avoid contact." Sarah watched through her scope as Jake's team expertly avoided the approaching individuals and completed their mission without incident. As they extracted successfully, she felt the satisfaction that came from a job well done. Later that evening, as the team debriefed their operation, Jake approached Sarah. "Outstanding work today," he said. "You've become everything I thought you could be." Sarah smiled, thinking back to that first day when Jake had handed her his rifle and stepped aside. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." "That's what good leaders do," Jake replied. "They recognize potential and help it develop." As Sarah cleaned her rifle that night, she thought about the woman she had been 9 months ago. Aimless, working minimum wage, with no clear direction in life. Now she was part of something important, something that mattered. She had found her purpose behind the scope of a rifle, and in doing so, had discovered who she was meant to be.